wanna go for a ride?
I just have a feeling that somehow the audio department has juiced up its energy level a little bit more. I love the music today, and particularly because of the fact that we need as much enthusiasm and as many incentives as possible, because when it rains, Cary, around here, you know what happens. They open the gates to the institution, they hand all of the inmates the keys to cars, and then they tell them where the freeways are. People just simply forget how to drive on wet pavement.
I would have to say I noticed that coming in this morning. It took extra amount of time to get here, and I had to be extra careful.
And you are talking about being extra careful for everybody who comes from someplace else and may have forgotten or didn't know about the emissions program. So let's talk about the emissions program to begin with. The fact that it's in place and it asks us to do what?
Well, basically, vehicles are mandated they go through an emission check all the way back to 1967. So if you've got a 1967 model vehicle, which there's still some oldies on the road out here, all the way up, it needs to go through an emission test so you can get your registration tag.
And then do the 67s and the 70s and so on have a harder time? Because just automotive engineering was different then.
Right.
Will one of those cars pass the emissions test?
Well, the standards are, I guess you'd say, fairly loose for those old cars, but
they're more flexible, right?
Well, the standards have creeped up and up and up, and the amount of emissions allowed for model years keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And any car can actually be a challenge to get through emissions, and that's why I kind of wanted to bring up a few different points today to kind of maybe ease the pain and ease the burden of going through emissions.
We have you here regularly to ease both pain and burden. Cary Lockwood, by the way, is an automotive consumer advocate with Your Auto Network. And as much as anything, I mean, not only is he an authority on virtually everything under the hood, under the car, on top of, inside the cabin, but also he's an authority on who the good guys are that can fix your car. And so all you have to do in order to find out a good mechanic in the general neighborhood is what?
Is just, go to yourautonetwork.com and you can punch in a zip code or a service you're looking for in your neighborhood where you live or where you work. And you can find shops that we've thoroughly reviewed to make sure that they're a good choice for the consumer to get treated fairly and have the necessary skills and equipment to fix your car and maintain your car properly.
Okay, Cary, in lieu of even making that call, let me find out now for everybody about what I ought to know about emissions testing in advance of my having to go.
Well, there's always a couple things that I like to do, and I know when I take my vehicles through, I always think about that. I'm like, what are some of the things that people flunk a lot on? And one of the things that I've run into many times over the years is just something as simple as, your good old air filter. Now,
well, you see,
however,
an air filter, you say the good old air filter, like all of us would be able to identify that instantly. Cary, your life has been automobiles, and even though guys sometimes fake it, most of us have no idea what that is. It could be Elizabeth Taylor's wedding ring.
Well, the reason I showed this one is because this is probably one that most people actually recognize. This one's out of an older vehicle. Actually, this one's going into my old vehicle because I'm coming up due for emissions.
How old?
Well, this one's a brand new one right here.
No, how old the vehicle?
The vehicle I have to run through soon is a 95.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
All right.
However, what's interesting is this device has become extremely hard to get to on so many models. Most people will open the hood now on their late model vehicle and they're gonna go, where is it?
Yes.
And so basically what I'm saying is it gets ignored. And with my personal vehicle, even though I don't live on a dirt road, it's very dusty and dirty out here. The air is. And it's an item that many times does not make it to the recommended change interval in this climate. So a lot of times this element is recommended to be serviced or replaced at, say, 30,000 miles. My personal vehicle is usually about 12,000 miles, and they're due to be replaced.
But wouldn't my service guy at the shop, if I'm still under warranty, wouldn't he know it's time to replace that?
Well, if your vehicle's under warranty, they would replace it if it failed an emissions inspection. But usually emissions inspections, because when your vehicle is new, you don't even have to go through for 5 years. Okay, you automatically, get your tags every year, but beyond that 5-year time frame, that's when you have to start going through. And what I always say is, hey, you know what? Have your servicing filter, make sure that this gets replaced often. Along with, before going through emissions, it's always a good idea to, have your vehicle serviced, get the oil change done.
Okay, if I have to have the emissions testing, I have the little notification, right? If I know that I'm going to go in next month,
Right.
then what should I do with one of your people, for example, or my mechanic, in advance to do what I can to make sure that I go through smoothly?
Now, if you have something like a check engine light on, that's a warning sign. You don't even want to go through.
I don't have any lights
Right,
on at all.
but-
I don't know before I
Right.
go to the emissions
Exactly,
testing
but I
place.
mean, people still will go through because they don't really understand.
Yeah.
But if there's a light in the dash, obviously you need something taken care of. But if there's no light in the dash and your vehicle's running fine, I usually say, hey, you want your air filter inspected or replaced.
Yes.
Step one. You want to get fresh oil in that. Make sure that there's no hydrocarbons that are built up in your oil, which happens, basically raw fuel. There's going to be a little bit of that in your vehicle's oil as time goes by. So you want to, have a fresh oil change. And then the other thing that's really neat is a shop, they can actually plug in their vehicle scanner to your connector underneath your dash that reads computer data, and they can look at a bunch of things that are called readiness tests. And basically, your vehicle will go through its own self-checks to see if there's any problems with your emission system. And what's interesting about that is sometimes those checks have not been completed for some reason, even though it's not kicking on a check engine light. So what we used to always do is say, hey, let's just run the readiness checks and see if they've all been completed. For instance, let me give you some examples.
Just a couple, because we're almost out of time.
Right, but like a catalytic converter. Everybody pretty much knows what a catalytic converter is. They're actually self-tests the computer can run to make sure that device is operating properly. And when you see that it's, the specifications are getting towards the, where they would fail the test, that's kind of an early warning sign that there might be an issue that needs to be addressed.
Is there
before you
any
go.
test that will answer the question, why did you bring this?
A gas gap is another common failure, and most people can
What?
just.
But at the emissions testing place, a gas cap is
They
gonna help
test
me
the
fail?
gas cap. Many times there's a seal in here that gets old and cracks, and then you get vapor leaking, and you'll fail. Many people fail just for something as simple as a gas cap. So a consumer can actually look at that and go, hey, that seal's got a nick in it, or a rip, or a crack. Get a new one before you go through, and it might save you from going back again.
Hey, you're a car pro. In 12 seconds, tell me, do you think that the emissions testing is a good idea, or is it a waste of time? Or, third choice, is it just a revenue producer for the state?
I think it does all those things, but it does keep your car, emitting as minimal emissions as it should. And it also is good to make sure your car is running at its optimum for fuel economy, which is good for everybody.
Hey, listen, with the Volt coming out and the Leaf coming out and electric cars now, the Tesla, of course, for those of you who want to spend $102,000 for a two-seater that's electric, all of the electric cars, one of these days you got to come down and we got to talk about the practicality or impracticality of electric automotive devices.
We
Cary
will.
Lockwood is here, and he has been as an automotive consumer advocate from your auto network, and it becomes even more yours when you know you can call him anytime. And you can also get in touch with him on our website, aztv.com. This is Pat McMahon. Stay with us. Sports, Olympics, hockey coming up.